Hello, Kristina. Welcome to Introverted Indies. It's really great to have you.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Would you like to just introduce yourself to everyone? Tell us a little bit about what book you've got and, yeah, a little bit about you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Kristina W. Kelly. I write sci-fi, fantasy, poetry, and I often combine them. I've written one book that's out right now with one of my best friends, and we fused science fiction and fantasy, and that's Trials of the Innermost.
Excellent.
And we also released a cozy winter prequel to that people can read. It's a short story, a standalone called The Lady's Crown Bearer. And then I'm super excited. My poetry book is releasing October 23, Imaginari, which combines fantasy and science fiction poetry with my photography. So I do a little bit of everything. I love writing. And then I also have a book coming out in January of 2025. It's a sapphic fantasy romance. So I kind of dabble in all the different genres. I like to fuse them. I'm also a trumpet player, so music, nature is really interesting for me and finds its way into my writing. I love playing video games. I take photography, and then I live in Indiana in the United States, and I'm here with my husband and my two little ones.
Oh, lovely. Oh, that's amazing. So you've written a whole heap of things. Because yeah, I thought it was just the poetry, but no, that's really exciting. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so been your big inspirations for your writing? I know you said sci-fi and fantasy and stuff, but are there like films, or was there a moment when you thought, I like fantasy, that's kind of what I want to do? What's
Yeah. I mean, I've been hooked on fantasy for a very long time. I think one of my earliest introductions to it was C.S. Lewis with the Chronicles of Narnia, and then probably shortly after that, as I got a little bit older, Lord of the Rings. And then it just rolled down the hill from there, just took up speed, and I was really interested in just gobbling up everything. The Star Wars series with their books, I really got in depth with that. I have a whole shelf full of just Star Wars spin-off books, and it wasn't until I was maybe after college where I realized like I could actually do a book. Like I'd been writing for as long as I could remember. One of those books, maybe Narnia, inspired me to write my first stories. And I remember writing for on my mom's typewriter when I was little in elementary school. But it wasn't until after college where I realized like I could actually make a book with that. And that was the first one I released with one of my best friends. So we both decided we could do a book together. And that was our first book for both of us, was this one that we did together.
So how did you find writing with someone else? Because obviously it's two creative influences coming together, like, with a bit so I thought, oh, I like that, but they didn't. And, how did that kind of work?
Yeah, we did a lot of planning to begin with. He lived in the same area as myself. And so we would get together, we'd go to libraries, coffee shops, and we'd brainstorm, we'd create the thing. So once we had everything kind of mostly figured out, we kept them in kind of like Dropbox and Google Docs and things. We have like master lists, like here's all these different places and characters and the history and stuff. And we used all that and then kind of divided the characters, so to speak. So we actually wrote this book from 6 points of view. So most of the time I took 3 of them and he would take 3 of them. And so we'd write the chapters and then give each other input, or I felt like I was not as good at dialogue as he was. So often I would leave notes like, Jonathan, please do dialogue here. And he felt I was better at like battle scenes. So we traded off our skills. And that was one of the things I think worked really well for our collaboration, was that we did bring these different skill sets and our strengths to the project. And as we worked through it, I feel like we both just made each other better in the areas we thought maybe we were a little bit weaker. Kind of like a master class, or like like we studied it by looking at each other's stuff and learning from each other's comments and things. It was for us, a fun process.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting because, there's always things, aren't there, in writing that you think, well, I'm not so good at that. So, and to have someone else to help you with that is awesome. And so how did you get into poetry? Because you said photography as well as poetry. Is those two things kind of linked together?
I've been doing photography and poetry for a long time too. I think in high school, I got a little more serious working through those high school emotions, and Edgar Allan Poe was a really big influence. So back then I wrote a lot of darker, kind of more the Poe type stuff, and it's evolved over time. And for years, I've wanted to combine my two interests of photography and poetry and do a book. But classic me, I was putting it off. And while I put it off, my hard drive failed with the majority of my photography.
Oh, that's gutting.
And I almost gave up. But I attended a National Poetry Writing Month thing on like Facebook, and there was these prompts, and I found myself gravitating towards fantasy and science fiction in my poetry, just like I do with my stories. And I thought, let me just keep doing that. And so over the last few years, I've been writing a lot of fantasy and science and sci-fi poetry, and I found some of my favorite photographs I thought I lost over in various cloud backup systems. And then I've taken new photographs as well and decided I'm going to do the book finally. Let's not let another hard drive fail, and let's get the thing done. And that's what Imaginari, releasing this month here at the end of October, is. It's a collection of some of those lost and found photographs, paired with some of the poetry that fits them. Sometimes I actually feel like photography, capturing that moment, is a lot of what like poetry does. You can see in nature, for me, nature is very inspirational, and in itself, I feel like nature creates poetry. So I tried to do that a bit with my photography, matching some of them with the poems, some of the poems inspiring the photographs, and then some of the photographs just being by themselves, and let the reader or viewer take a look at it and try to feel their own poetry from that photography.
So are there photos within the Imaginari book? Are there pictures inside? Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll show up very well on. Yeah, so this year, where I live in Indiana, we had our first total solar eclipse in forever. And so that was the first time I really took out my camera and got really serious lately. And I did a photograph of the solar eclipse as it went through its different phases. And then I wrote a poem to go with it. So there's stuff like that. And then I feel like in nature, a lot of the stuff can feel very sci-fi. When you watch like a Star Trek episode, even though it's off in outer space, we're encountering very similar things. And so we've got really cool stuff in nature, like this leafy sea dragon. And so this one's paired with like a dragon type photograph. And then you can just look at the power and the immensity of like oceans. And this is off in Hawaii. So I've got full page spreads of some photographs, and then I've got things I just kind of play with just by themselves, like I said. And so like here's where I actually put the poem on top of the photograph to really show that they're connected.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I think nature is phenomenal. You obviously don't almost need other worlds when you look at even like things close up. It's things you can't even imagine. But have you always wanted to write, or is it something that you kind of did later on in life, or has it been a thing you did from childhood?
Yeah, I wrote stories from an early age, and I actually would read stories to my little stuffy animals in my room. I'd create these stories and I'd read them. But yeah, I would dabble in it. I'd write all through high school. Back in the day, online, we had message boards and forums, and I actually started these online forums where you would write together with other people, kind of like role-playing games. So we'd write like a paragraph, and then somebody else would come in pretending to be a character, and we'd create stories together. So I've always been writing something. And I always started and stopped stories. I've got at least 5 novels that I started and then just like didn't go anywhere with them. And it wasn't until I met my really good friend Jonathan in the workplace that we connected over sci-fi and fantasy and video games, and we realized we're both writers. And so we just started sharing our stuff with each other. And I can't remember if it was him or me that came up with the idea, but we said, let's write something together. And that was the first time myself really uncovered that like, this is something I'd like to do more than just kind of for fun. I want to finish projects. And ever since we finished that first book, I've just been doing more and more. I've written lots of short stories, and I'm submitting them to publications to try to get published. I'm submitting my poetry into magazines to get them published. And like recently I got a couple in several fantasy and sci-fi specific magazines and whatnot. So it's always been there, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was around me, I just didn't realize, or some of the people I interacted with, it was just like, oh, that you can't get anywhere with that. Like I never really took a hold of it until in the last like 10 years or so. And now I've taken it a little more seriously, and my goal is always to finish more projects, get more of my stories out there.
Excellent. So no, but I find with it as a writer, it's not something you can just go and do like a course and then you're qualified to do it. It's not, you can't just go and train and then you're ready to go. It's one of those things that you have to kind of develop and grow. And yeah, no, that's really awesome. I mean, when I was, I don't know, maybe 15, I tried writing a book with a friend of mine, and it ended up being just some wacky, crazy adventure. Some random old characters we've made up, but yours sounds much more successful. I think I found that one day. Oh, my goodness, what is this?
I love it.
I'm just saying, I love the shirt. I love the card. Brilliant.
Yes, he's my favorite captain.
So my husband never had a TV growing up, so I've had to introduce him to all these things. He's missed out on a wealth of awesome things. So yeah, we're working through Picard at the moment. So.
Awesome.
So when you're not writing, you said you quite like gaming and things like that. What kind of games do you into? What do you like to play?
Yeah, I'm mainly role-playing games. So my favorites include like all the Final Fantasy games. I'm really into Dragon Age, Skyrim, and then I play some online games. But it's so funny, and mainly it's just to play like with my husband. It's when you get to like the multiplayer online games, it's not like because you're interacting with a whole bunch of other people. Now I like to play them like EverQuest and World of Warcraft and such. But I just like playing with my little tiny group, like my husband and whatnot. Yeah. I wish there was more games that he and I could play on, like on the couch. They make these games now where each of you have to have your own console and you have to buy the game separately, but we still find hidden gems like strategy games where we can play. Like there's one called Civilization, and they're now up to, I think, game 5, but you build your civilization from scratch, like from barbarians, and try to get all the way up to like the space race and such. And so it's fun. Anytime I can find a game I can play with my husband too is always something I like to do. Yeah,
no, I agree with you. I find most games you have to either, like you said, be online with someone else in a different room on another console. You can't, there's not a lot of games that are 2-player. I mean, I think we've kind of reduced it down to Lego games, because there's like Lego Star Wars and Lego Hobbit and all that stuff. You can play 2-player. So, I know they're a bit childish, but it's finding something there that you can do together. So not have
those
to be
are fun.
Yes. So do you have any advice you could give to anybody about becoming a writer or about their writing journey? Anything that you've found like really helpful in your career?
I would say that focusing on like finding your tools and knowing that you can try things and adjust works really well for me. When I first started off, I read quite a bit of stuff about like you have to write every day or you're not a writer, and that put a lot of kind of weird guilt on myself, where if I didn't write that day, I suddenly was like, am I actually a writer? I should have written today, and I felt really bad. But as I've grown a bit in my writing and I've experienced a lot of interaction with online writers, and I've attended some courses and read books, blah, blah, blah. There's no wrong or right way to write. But these tools, I think of them more as things in your tool belt, that if something's not working, you can go to that tool belt, change it up, fix things up. So maybe you read craft books, maybe you go to conferences, maybe you just analyze your favorite books, or maybe you do read every day, or maybe you decide I'm going to write on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. and I'm going to put a crown on my head, and like that's what gets you to write. So whatever, there's no wrong or right way. And I wish I'd known that earlier, instead of feeling like I had to do something the way somebody else was doing. And as I got older, I had 2 kids. Like it doesn't work for me to. People say, we'll stay up late and write. Well, no, my children don't go to bed until late. And so then I'm going to be up till 1 a.m. and I have a day job. So I find what works for me. And that's what I would suggest. See what other people do, play around with it, and you can build your own character sheet for yourself of this is how it works for me.
So I find that I work 4 days a week. So on a Wednesday is my one day off. So that's the day that I kind of prioritize. That's when I sit down and write. That's like, if anyone else wants to see me on that day, I'm not keen to go out of the house.
Yeah.
It gets a little antisocial, but otherwise, yeah, like you said, I've got 4 kids, so the biggest ones don't go to bed till 7:30, and then yeah, you're up late, and if they're up early the next day, then we've got to go to work. I work in a school, so you've kind of got to be on your game. You can't be
Right.
knackered.
Right.
Do you have like a particular day or like a schedule that you follow for your writing? An evening or?
Yeah, I do try to reserve kind of my lunch time. So with my day job, I kind of like work while I'm eating, and then I'll take a lunch and kind of prioritize that time. And then I've got a little bit of time between when I get off and when I need to pick up the kids. So I'll use that time a lot to write as well. But then I really just, whenever the opportunity arises, I snatch it. So if we're going to go for a family adventure at a nearby museum, my husband likes to drive. It's a win-win. He drives. I pull up my really old tablet and write for half an hour on our drive to the museum and get some more writing time in there, and then get to have family time. So I feel like I'm not sacrificing one or the other, and I'm getting to do everything I do feel like I want to do.
Yeah, it's hard to squeeze things in, but yeah, if you can snatch a little bit here, a little bit there, it
Mm-hmm.
feels like you're
And it
still
adds up.
keeping things
Yeah.
going. Yeah, it does. Yeah, even if it's 100 words here or there, like you said, it does add up. So do you
Yeah.
find your kids enjoy reading and writing, or are they kind of not into that sort of thing?
Yeah, they're really young right now, but love books. We love going to the library. We love reading. And then the oldest of my two, he started to be better at writing letters. And so he's very interested in sitting down and writing. So last night we got on the bed and he said he wanted to write. And so I pulled out my notebook and I said, I'll write with you too. And so I asked him what he was writing, and he said he was writing a poem. And so I was writing a poem too, but he was just practicing his letters. But it filled my writer heart with joy that he was enjoying the writing and just sitting down with his mommy to do what she's doing.
Yeah, I think if you show enthusiasm for things, then they become enthusiastic then as well. It rubs off. I'm always I've got 3 boys and 1 girl, and my girl she loves to write, she loves to read, she's absolutely adores it, whereas the boys are a little more like resistant. They like reading, they'll always be reading, but writing, they're like, no, if they have to pick up a pen, then no.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a girl boy thing but yeah, they would write reams and reams and reams. But yeah. Do you fancy doing like a quick fire? I'll ask you a couple of questions. You just give me your sort of one answer.
Sure.
And then maybe, would you like to maybe read one of your poems?
I could, yeah.
Like, I don't know if you wanted to keep things until it's released or whether you're happy to.
No, yeah, I can read.
Super. Okay. Favorite book?
Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, I thought we were going to go for Lord of the Rings or a fantasy.
Right.
Favorite game?
Dragon Age Origins.
Favorite film?
Lord of the Rings.
Favorite writing beverage?
Tea. Earl Grey hot.
Favorite snack?
Oh, guacamole and chips.
Oh, that is a good one. Okay. Trying to think. Do you know what? I'm out. No, that was great. Yeah, I would love to hear one of your poems. I'm really interested. I've never heard of like sci-fi fantasy type poetry, so I'd be really intrigued to hear one.
Yeah, let me see. All right, here we go. So this one is called Spaceships to Neverland. Muscles activate spaceships to Neverland, make them fly without pixie dust, and return to sun glistening on scales, bottled inside a water globe. Shake it and the confetti swirls. Plinks sing electric piano operas while silver Polaroids settle beneath towers that giggle into rubble. Grit of sand on lips from chasing robots with wands. Stroller runs through stars hunting fire trucks and their siren stories as light strands wave goodnight. Muscles, pillow heads, dancing electronica.
Excellent. I love it. Yeah, I've never heard of sci-fi or fantasy poetry, so that's really interesting. Thank you so much. So
Yeah,
where
thank you.
can we so you said it's coming out this month?
Yes,
The Imagine
October
yeah,
23rd is when it releases.
super. And so where can we get that?
It's going to be on Kindle Unlimited for ebook, and of course, Amazon for print. But it'll also be available where other online bookstores. So if you buy it from your local bookstore or Books a Million and those type, it'll be available there as well.
Super. And your other books, they're all Amazon or are they other places?
They are same type, so you can get it on Amazon or the Trials of the Innermost is through Midnight Meadow Publishing, so you can get it from their website or again online retailers, Barnes and Noble, etc. And same way, my new book when it comes out in January, same thing. It'll be across all those platforms.
I forgot to ask you, any future projects other than your poetry book? Have you got anything else in there? Can you just mention something there so we can have a little?
Yes, I'm super excited. My solo fantasy romance novel is Tavern Tale. It's releasing from publisher Space Wizard in January. It was inspired by RPGs, so it's set in cozy autumn. It is cozy with higher stakes. We've got a main character who has lost her magic, and she's searching for her talisman when she goes into a tavern, and the tavern owner says that she'll help her find her magic if she will help find this quest in a chest. So it's very much inspired by you open up like a Skyrim and you go do a quest and someone just happens to trust you and opens this chest and is like, here, go find this thing. And those are kind of the vibes that I wanted to put in that story. And so I'm super excited because I wrote it by myself. And so it's my first release without my bestie helping me write it.
Yeah. So have you been able to use him to just like better read for you or anything like that?
Definitely. Yeah. He's a great writing partner. So if ever I get stuck or I feel like this thing stinks, I've been writing this and now it's terrible, I'll talk to him and he'll talk me down from the ledge that no, it's not terrible. Or here's some, ideas to spark your ideas. So he's definitely a great writing partner and always available.
So when are you hoping to release that one?
We don't have an exact date in January, but it will be January 2025. So coming up pretty soon. And hopefully my cover will release in November. So then I can put that out there on my social medias to show everybody.
Super. No, that's brilliant. And I think you're going to do a reading for us at some point for the YouTube channel as well of one of your books.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think I'll do, I might do Trials of the Innermost or Tavern Tale. I'm not sure yet. It'll be a last minute decision.
We'll look forward to that. So if you just want to give us like your social media thing so people can find you or your newsletter so people can get hold of that. And that would be fun.
Yep. I'm across most social medias at Kristina W. Kelly. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, etc. But also I have my website, which is kristinaseyes.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter there. I'm also still taking applications for future ARC readers and Street Team too. I'm always looking for people to sign up there if they're interested in helping out and reading things early.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on to Introverted Indies. I think you are our first video interview, so that's really exciting.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. It's been really great to meet you and hear about your books.
Yes, it's been fantastic. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.